Okay, then I guess we'll jump right into the first panel, which is a culture panel, the first culture panel. And our first speaker is going to be Josefa Ros Velasco. She is Marie Sklodowska Curie Actions postdoctoral researcher at Complutense University in Madrid, in Spain, and she's also the founder and president of the International Society of Boredom Studies, as well as the co-organizer of this Boredom conference. And she's also the co-director of the Journal of Boredom Studies. And the title of the talk today is Contemporary Myths on Boredom. So, Josefa, it's your turn.
Yeah, it's me again. So thank you so very much. I think my presentation is a good way to start this conference. So not to have more delay, I'm gonna start. We don't know almost nothing about boredom. Even though the experience of boredom has been part of our daily lives for centuries, we are far from being clear about what its suffering consists of, what its main causes and consequences are, how we can escape it. This is one of the most repeated myths about boredom among some boredom scholars, one from which many others derive that at present, I think, cause unnecessary confusion about a phenomenon on which there exists, in fact, a whole corpus of scientific knowledge. We are bombarded each day, especially by the press, with false mantras about boredom that occupy a place in the collective imagination. Most of them, of course, are harmless, simple narratives from our popular culture, but others, however, have the power to condition the way in which we perceive reality to the point of to condition the way in which we perceive this reality and to the point of becoming stigmatizing. Breaking with some of our most ingrained beliefs about boredom is not an easy task, but it's necessary to understand the true nature of this state. So, in tribute to what has been achieved today by experts in boredom studies, all that remains during my presentation is an exercise in demystifying the subject of boredom. So, I shall begin by returning to the first myth. On many occasions, I have heard colleagues who work on boredom in encounters of all kinds say that we know almost nothing about this common state. And I think our supposed ignorance of what boredom is cannot be justified in any way whatsoever. Not just because we all suffer from this in person with different intensities and duration, but also because it's unfair to those thinkers who, since ancient times, have devoted their efforts to defining such a peculiar state. So I would love to have time to make a big overview of our history, but just very quickly, starting with classical authors like Horace, Lucretius, Seneca, and continuing with others like St. Augustine, Ponticus, Cassian, John Chrysostom, St. Jerome, Hugh of St. Victor, St. Thomas, of course, and later with Voltaire, Kant, German writers like von Kleist, Heine, Tieck, Wagner, later with French writers like de Chateaubriand, de Senancour, Flaubert, Baudelaire, and French physiologists like Esquirol, de Chauvoche, de Vismont, philosophers like Simmel, Krakauer, Adorno, and psychologists like Tardieu, Münsterberg, Lipps, Fenichel, through more contemporary researchers like Greenson, Warren, O'Hanlon, Mikulas, and Bodanovich, and the current pops of boredom like Eastwood, Van Tilburg, Westgate, Dunker, El Pidoro, just to name a few, boredom has been described as a state of unrest caused by an imbalance between what we expect from the context and what we truly feel we gain from this context. So, I have no time, as I said, to go in depth through this long journey, which is in my book, The Disease of Boredom. This is going to be translated into English by Princeton University Press very soon. But just with this in mind, you will agree that it's hard to maintain the claim that we know almost nothing about boredom. With different nuances, all these thinkers have contributed to us all having an idea, even if minimal, about what boredom is, which can be expressed as follows. Boredom is a state of displeasure that we suffer from when the environment in which we find ourselves immersed or the activity we try to engage in doesn't stimulate us in line with our initial expectations, resulting in the painful experience of meaninglessness. We all suffer from this, more or less frequently, at different times and in different places, depending on both exogenous factors that stem from the possibilities of the context and endogenous factors related to one's own personality and expectations. So the person who is bored feels that the relationship with the present reality is damaged, and they should do whatever within their grasp to return to an optimum state of stimulation, which translate into the sense of well-being. This description is applicable to any experience of boredom in which what determines its ultimate expression is the interaction between such variables as intensity, superficial or profound, durability, passing or chronic, and the agent of the experience, individual or collective, in this relationship established between the person or people bored and the specific context. So, I think that the essence of boredom, even addressing it as a multifactor phenomenon, is always the same. This unrest as a result of a relationship with the present that has become obsolete and that we have to address. I believe we can all see a part of ourselves in this simplification. So we know something, if not a lot, about boredom. I have taken the time to debunk this myth because, as I said at the beginning, any subsequent ideas are the result of this. Without going further, the following myths are two typical responses to the question, why don't we know almost nothing about boredom? Of course, we don't know anything because the study of boredom is still in its infancy and because boredom has been not paid the attention it deserves. I'm not surprised that those who are not engaged in researching this phenomenon think that boredom has not aroused or curiosity as a subject of scientific analysis until a relatively short time ago. What I do find surprising is that these claims are made by some boredom scholars. So they are false, as I demonstrated in the paper I'm showing. However, this evidence doesn't prevent many researchers from justifying the need for their works based on these two myths. It's true that the study of boredom has been very dispersed in terms of disciplines, and it's also true that the institutionalization and the academization of boredom is only just beginning now. But this is not reason enough to maintain that we have barely begun to research boredom, or that in the past we have not shown an interest in the experience of boredom. Such affirmations um, only make sense in very specific contexts. For example, when applied to the study of boredom in animals in the field of zoology. Another myth related to this, which has been debunked in some way in what I have set up before, is that which states that the experience of boredom has arisen in modern society. Boredom is not the exclusive jurisdiction of capitalist societies. According to the descriptions I have suggested, boredom is within the grasp of anyone, even for a species other than ours, which debunks the myth that boredom is a human condition only. Many people believe that hunter-gatherer society didn't suffer from boredom because their lives were very busy in an attempt to survive, but they are wrong. Our predecessors invested a lot less time in survival than we employ nowadays. This is evolution. But even if this were the case, filling our time with numerous tasks doesn't imply an absence of boredom. This task may be very unstimulating. At any event, modern boredom is attributed to the birth of leisure time, time that other civilizations, like the Romans, also enjoyed. It's easy it's easy to think that boredom is experienced more in modern times than in any other, because we have more time, more free time in which this state can appear. But in the same way as we cannot suppose that we simply avoid getting bored by being busy, nor should it be supposed that the availability of free time means it's easier to suffer from boredom. Boredom can arise as easily in leisure time as in duty time. What distinguishes us from other times is that there are many more of us with the chance to write about boredom, to write about our experiences in whatever context. Of course, those that suffer from boredom because they don't know how to manage their free time are also those that have more time to reflect on their own experiences in this specific situation for posterity. Are bored by those that are bored by endless days of work don't tell us about their boredom because they have no time to do it. But that doesn't mean that they are not bored. So this may give us the sensation that boredom is something modern as a result of an excess of free time. But as I already said, having free time is not something exclusive to modern day societies, nor is writing about it, nor does boredom exclusively take place in free time. Another myth that has been debunked, I think, together with those popular sayings that exclaim that only the rich get bored because they have a lot of free time. They have time, but also money to fill the time. Or the other one that say that boredom is the same as doing nothing. We get bored when we are obliged to do nothing, when what we would like is to be doing something that we have chosen to do ourselves. The same as we get bored when we have to do something by external demand that is not important or stimulating to us, when we would prefer doing whatever we want or doing nothing at all. Not doing anything because this is what we have prescribed for ourselves, because we want to rest, to disconnect or reconnect with our own thoughts. It's not synonymous with boredom. This ties into another popular myth, that of wanting to have time to be bored. Boredom is always painful. It's always painful because it's the result of dissatisfaction. No one in their right mind yearns to feel pain. What one is to have free time, to carry out activities that are freely chosen or to do nothing at all. But we don't expect that at the end of the day, boredom will occupy this free time we have. Everyday expressions like I plan to spend the weekend bored or if only I had time to get bored stem from a confusion in the meaning we attribute to the word boredom. You only have to think about a time when you were really bored, reading a book you couldn't get into, or having to wait in a waiting room without the chance to escape, and relieve this pain you felt in order to see that you wouldn't want to repeat the situation or for your boredom to have lasted any longer. Tedium is not pleasurable until unless when we say tedium, boredom, what we really want to say is to rest, which is totally the opposite. Maybe I used to joke with this. Maybe we should extend the definition of boredom to include this new broader view, according to which boredom means enjoying doing nothing of your own volition. Although, for this meaning, the Oxford English Dictionary has coined the term to be in goblin mode. So even after debunking this myth, many people advocate the idea that whenever boredom may happen, it's useful to experience it because boredom make us more creative and smarter. For example, just Google the words boredom and creativity. This is undoubtedly my favorite myth. We endlessly hear repeated in the media that boredom is positive because it drives creativity and hence it's desirable to have time to be bored and spend long periods of time doing nothing. When we get bored, we feel pain, this is clear. And we try to put a stop to what we find to be a nuisance by making use of the resources within our grasp. To express this another way, when exposed, when exposed to a boring situation or activity, our levels of cortical stimulation drop, and we feel a pain that forces us to design a strategy to recover of equilibrium. What we do to make the source of boredom go away is to introduce a change into our environment. In this process, is it in this process that some people detect a component of creativity? Escaping from boredom implies a moment of creativity in the sense that we must bring into play something where previously there was nothing or where what there was didn't stimulate us. However, what we are told through this myth is that boredom will help make us more creative in the sense, in reference to imagination or invention, which is to suppose a great deal. Boredom is reactive. I prefer to use this word to avoid the confusion generated by the term creative. It's a driving force that boosts change. But firstly, this change doesn't necessarily imply the introduction of something completely new and original into the environment. In fact, usually the design of this strategy to flee from boredom doesn't even take place consciously, but rather we resort to ways stored away in our subconscious that have proven to be successful in the past in disarming the source of boredom. We do this almost mechanically. If a film bores me, I change to a series or play a video game or connect to social media or call my friends to go out and have some beers or read a book. But even when we become aware that we need to do something to prevent boredom and we start thinking about how to do this, we end up resorting time and time again to the same common solutions. Obviously, we cannot generalize, not one way or the other. But the belief that boredom makes us more creative, it exudes great optimism. It not only seeks to convince us that something original can come out of our boredom, but that this creation stemming from the response to boredom will be useful. We forget that a large percentage of our reactions to boredom are dysfunctional or unhealthy. So if Tyrion is gonna make me more creative in the sense that it will arouse my curiosity in drugs, well, perhaps boredom is not so positive as I expected. The reactive nature of boredom is praiseworthy because it keeps us in motion, but not because it leads to geniality. So the answer is no. Boredom doesn't necessarily make us more creative, even not even children. We often overestimate our ability to respond creatively and functionally to boredom. These slogans also send the message that it's negative to spend all our time busy doing things. This is a direct criticism of the society of hyperactivity. And the, the overstimulation we subject our brains to prevents in some way, this is the myth, prevents the necessary rest that so that this creativity flows. So the solution, boredom, because everyone knows that boredom help the brain to rest. But it's quite the opposite. The need to slam the door on boredom even manifests itself in states of stress and anxiety when we can find the key to banishing it. I also wonder why we were going to have to slow the pace for the light to come on. Pablo Picasso said that the muses visit us will we work. Why not will we tweet or watch a video on TikTok? I'm finishing. I have not spoken about those who experience boredom in a dysfunctional fashion. We are not always in a position to respond to boredom, for better or for worse. Some people suffer from individual dependent chronic boredom because they are unable to recognize more desirable situations than those that cause their boredom to encourage change. Others, in turn, are able to identify the way in which they wish to break away from the source of boredom, but the very context that generates this boredom prevents them from realizing the idea or putting it into practice. So this boredom prevails indefinitely over time. This is what I have called situation-dependent chronic boredom or chronified boredom. So the last myths, just to finish, that I wish to broach are precisely related to the forms of dysfunctional boredom. For a long time, we all have heard people say that only those who want to get bored in this life, that only those lacking in curiosity get bored, or that only lazy people get bored, or what is worse, that only fools get bored. If only escaping from boredom were a simple question of willpower. For those who struggle to escape from boredom, these terrible myths are stigmatizing. Aside from leading a moral and intellectual superiority, by means of these myths, the whole burden of responsibility in comparing boredom is placed on the subject, ignoring the importance of the context and the pathological status of boredom exist. These myths, just a minute, please. These myths, which I classify as stigmatizing, are precisely those that halt the advance of boredom studies and of the society itself. They make us ashamed of the causes of boredom, of things that don't satisfy us, and prevent us to discuss them as a group for fear of being pointed to as fools, vulgar, incapable, or lazy. When someone asks us about what bores us, we hide our feelings and respond with such expressions as, I never get bored, or I don't have time to get bored, to show others that we hunger for knowledge and have very busy lives because we comply with the role we need to fulfill as useful cogs in the wheel of production. I'm sure that there are real cases worthy of study of people who have no filter, able to engage with everything around them. But I doubt this is universal. So, sharing, this is my conclusion, sharing with others what we know about boredom, thanks to our own experiences, remarking on what bores us, destigmatizing boredom, and debunking the myths is the first step in preventing stagnation, dead ends, situations that as a society, we all the time create and turn into a source of boredom. This is a complicated exercise, as I said, but essential for the continuity of progress. Through history, we have fallen into the trap of understanding boredom as a shameful, sinful, miserable, and even sick state, instead of as a useful experience to acknowledge the obsolescence of our own daily routines. So the myth with I will end this presentation with is the one that says that we must learn to tolerate boredom. One that gained fame during the coronavirus pandemic. This doesn't mean that we must be willing to suffer it daily or welcome it with open arms under the pretext that it will make us more creative, for example, but rather integrate the inevitable experience of boredom in public dialogue, shrugging off, the prejudices and myths that prevents us from apprehending and harnessing boredom in its multifaceted fullness. They are the ones who lets us to try to escape boredom immediately, instead of accepting and exploring it closely to reap its benefit. Contemporary scholars of boredom dedicate ourselves to this commendable task of vindication. Thank you so very much.
Thank
Maybe,
you very
maybe
much.
too hard to start the conference.
I think it was a great way to start the conference, to be honest. It kind of like sums up a lot of the things that everybody in our community is kind of thinking about. So I think it's a great way to start. I don't think we have any concrete questions.
I need to admit some people before starting. Sorry. Okay. They are.
So one of the questions that I kind of thought about while listening to what you were saying was basically I was recently thinking a little bit about the concept of myths and sort of the role that they play. I think they're a lot of the time sort of linked to that idea of kind of emotional release or, like reassurances, that kind of thing. And I was wondering, have you thought about sort of I don't know, maybe the role that these myths play in our society, why we keep telling these kind of like things to ourselves? Have you thought about that?
I think I think we keep using this kind of repeating this kind of myths just because they are easy. They are an easy way to introduce ourselves to our own emotions, as you said. So it's easy to understand boredom in such a superficial way. And also, I think myths are positive, of course, Annie, because thanks to this kind of myths, they are an opportunity for us to reflect on in a more in-depth way about the question on which these myths are talking about. For example, since I published my book a year ago, I started hearing this kind of myths everywhere and overall in the press, as I in the newspapers and in the television. And I understand that this kind of myths help me to reflect in depth about what was missing in my book, those kind of things that were not properly understood, and in some way I go further thanks to this kind of myths. So they open the possibility, they open the door to the dialogue. So they are always positive, but I think it's important to debunk some of them, especially not to repeat some kind of things like, this summer you should let your children get bored all the time because it's a very good thing for them, and it's very healthy and they are going to be smarter. This is false. This is false. So this is what I decide to start debunking this kind of myths, just to invite people to reflect in depth about boredom, because boredom is my life. Because boredom is my topic. Boredom is present in my life every day, every hour, almost every hour. So I want to share with people what I know, thanks to you all, of course, and your work on boredom, about this state, emotion, affect, whatever you want to say. I want to share that, okay, maybe there is a component of creativity. Go deeper, because don't keep on the superficial message. Go deeper, because there are more than this. Sorry. So, the short answer is that, uh, I'm happy. I'm happy with the Smiths because they give me the opportunity to develop in depth my own research on boredom, and because they are they show that boredom is in everyone's lips right now, and this make me very, very happy.
That's great.
I'm very bad in answering questions. I'm sorry. So
I don't think so. I think that
and
was
I
really good.
hate I hate doing this. So sorry in advance.
I think, Vinant, you've got a question?
Yeah, if you have time, thanks to Josefa for kicking off with such an interesting, thought-provoking talk. I'm definitely guilty myself of the first myth of saying that boredom hasn't been investigated.
I'm sorry.
And probably some of the others. So one of the myths that you demystified, I found particularly interesting, and that's the claim that actually often the media, I think, poses to us that somehow boredom is a phenomenon of modernity, and I'm not a historian, so I'm always wondering why people cling on to that belief. And personally, I always thought maybe it's some sort of cynicism about the world we live in at the moment, or some misplaced nostalgia for the past. You come from a broader perspective, so what do you think is it that causes people to claim that? And would people in other decades before us have made a similar claim?
Okay. Okay, just give me a second. Okay, if I understood your question, Vignan, very nice to see you, by the way.
Good
Uh,
to see you too. Yeah.
yes, yeah, yeah. If I understood your question, you are telling that you are asking why people is so focused on this belief that boredom is something concerning modern societies, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
And the question also is why people don't pay attention to boredom in other times, for example in Middle Ages, in ancient times, or and so on. So, well, I think I answered this question during my presentation, but this is only a hypothesis. This is something, my impression, okay? As you know, in modern times there are more people with the possibility to experience boredom and to write about boredom, because there is a process of alphabetization that allows more people to be able to express their feelings in a paper, and to put them for the posterity, for us. So in this sense, it's true on the one hand that during in modern times, more more intellectuals were writing about boredom. This doesn't mean that in the Middle Ages people didn't get bored, but less people have the chance to write about this. This is my hypothesis. And also, very related to this, I think that also this is very linked with the other myth that boredom is something that happens when in leisure time. Why? Because in modern times, inside this period, people who had more time to write about boredom were that people that people that suffer from boredom in leisure time. So the the idea we have in our minds right now in contemporary times, it is that boredom, first of all, is something that arose in modern time because it's the time in which everybody is talking about it, but just pay attention to this. Right now, currently, there is even more people writing about boredom. This is because we are experiencing now more boredom than before, or is because we now have more chances to express our feelings, not only by writing a book or a paper, but just you have only to enter in Twitter and just write, I'm bored, I'm about to kill myself out of boredom. So it's not a matter of experiencing boring. Oh, Marius is telling something, but I cannot read the chat right now. So it's not a matter of feeling more boredom now or from the beginning of modern times than in other periods, than of having more chances to write and to express our boredom and to share our feelings with other people. And of course, in modern times, those who wrote about boredom were those who experienced boredom in leisure time. So we have the idea that boredom is linked, is related to leisure time all the time. So just think about workers in the at the end of the 19th century. They were bored, of course, doing the same task once and again during, I don't know, 12 hours a day. They were bored, of course, but they don't have time to write about their boredom. So it was not until I don't know, the trend of Marxism started claiming about the conditions of workers in the industry that this boredom became visible. But boredom was there always, always. It's just boredom happens when the environment didn't match your expectations or your internal stimulation needs. So this is at hands of everybody along history, and even for animals, of course.
Thank you very much.
To not make myself comfortable with question, I'm extending myself a lot. I'm sorry.
Don't worry about it. I just wanted to very quickly check whether our second speaker is indeed here or not. So I'm not sure if Sonakshi is here. If she isn't, then we can probably go with another question because we do have a little bit of wiggly room that way. So I'm assuming I can't see her. And so if you are there, make yourself known. Otherwise, we'll, because I can see there's one more question. I think in the chat by Tiana. I don't know. Do you want to? Maybe I'll just read the question, or it's sort of a combination of a question and a comment, I believe. So it says, is it possible to imagine a dialectical opposite of boredom? So the great boredom of art and history is now the condition of everyday life. I mean, contradiction itself is boredom now. The radical potential of boredom that Benjamin imagined is not possible now. The claim that boredom can be cured is essentially a myth in itself, isn't it? So I don't know if you want to sort of respond to that. So it's kind of I suppose, a mixture. On the one hand, that idea of a dialectical opposite of boredom, and then that idea of, whether or not boredom can even be cured. Yeah, don't know if you want to respond to that.
Yeah, well, I totally agree, especially with that. Distractions, current distractions are boring now. It's weird, but not at all, not at all, because I will try to make myself understandable. The problem with entertainment or distractions today is that they are all predetermined. Predetermined. I mean, just imagine you have a catalog with options to escape boredom, to escape boring situations, conversations, activities, and so on. And you have to build this catalog over time during your life, adjusting your expectations to the environment and so on. But apart from this catalog, we have a predetermined catalog, which consists of options, of entertaining options, mediated by technology. Because I can imagine that this distraction today is mostly mediated by technology. So in this predetermined catalog, you have options to escape boredom that are not constructed by your own, but they are just given by the algorithm. Okay, algorithm, I think this is the word, by an algorithm. So we trust of free or free time to this algorithm. What is the problem with this? Why we get bored with this kind of entertainment, with this predetermined catalog? Because the options in this one are not meaning, they don't have a real sense for us, because we don't pay an active role in creating that options. So they usually didn't help don't help us to grow as human beings, to develop our own projects as individuals. Are the same in this predetermined catalog. The options are all the same for everybody, independently in which place of the world you live, or if you are a man or a woman, independently on your age. So it's logical that to think that this kind of entertainment is gonna fail sooner or later. Sooner or later. And when you are engaged in your social network in Twitter, how many times you suddenly realize, oh my God, what I am doing, why am I spending my time in this place? Because it's the same for you and for Annie, for Tony, for Marius, for everybody. So this is the reason I think, this is the reason why entertainment and distractions today are failing, are becoming boring for us, because we are very, I don't know the word, we don't want to think too much, because thinking is as painful as boring itself, I think. So we prefer to delegate our responsibility to this kind of algorithms, instead of thinking and reflect on what really feel my life. So
Thank you very much. I think that was really good. Cool. I think we'll just, because I can't see any
of course,
other questions.
just to, in case I'm seeing Marius trying to start a war between I myself and Liz Goodstein, and I just wanted to say that, of course, the reason, the causes, and the consequences of boredom in modern times are completely different than in other periods. Okay, I'm not I'm not fool. I totally understand this, but what I think is that the true nature of the experience of boredom is the same. This pain is the same. This frustration, this this lack of equilibrium between I myself and the present and the reality is the same. But of course, what it is causing, the obsolescence of the present, is different from a period than to another. Of course. It's a different kind of boredom, but not in some way.
Great. Okay. Thank you very much.